Okay class, right now what we're going to do is make the bottom half of our cupcake. And the idea is that we're going to use this cupcake silicone liner. It's a mold. We're going to use it as a mold to create the bottom of our cupcake. We'll press clay into this against the sides of it, and the clay that we pull out will have the form and shape of this mold, including the indentations, which is really nice. So I'm going to start with a piece of clay that's about this big. It's already been kneaded and wedged, and I'm going to go ahead and stick it inside my cupcake mold, and it should fill it up. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is press my clay into it to make what's called a pinch pot. So I can go ahead and stick my thumbs down in, and as I push down and out, my outside fingers are going to be holding and pressing against the side of the cupcake liner so that I don't stretch it out too big, because this rubber will stretch and it will make too wide of a cup. So I'm just moving my clay around, pressing it to the outside edge, and it will come up and over because I have too much clay, but that's okay. I can cut that off. So I'm squeezing. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and press it down on the bottom. My bottom kind of bumped out a little bit, so I'm going to push it down. By the way, before you begin this, make sure that the Wilson is on the outside of the cupcake liner, like that. If you use your cupcake liner inside out, which is like this with the Wilton on the inside, it won't work as well for you. But Wilton's on the outside of mine. So I'm going to go ahead and press down. Now I'm ready to trim off the edge of my clay, and I want to try to cut as close as I can to the liner without cutting the liner. So I'm going to hold it sideways. Don't hold it like this or like this. You want to hold it sideways so you can see the liner and you can see your clay. And you're going to go ahead and cut around with scissors carefully. You don't have to cut up against the liner, just close, until I get something like this. Now my job is to go ahead and peel the liner away. If you pull the liner down and out, it should peel off pretty easily. So I've got my cupcake base made. Now I can go ahead and take some water and I can smooth out the top of it to make it look really nice and smooth. I also want to flip it over, and I want to carve my initials, and I can use any sharp tool, into the bottom of the cupcake liner, and that is step one. I'm going to keep the bottom close by so that I can make sure that when I make the top, if this is the top, that it fits nicely over and rests on top of the bottom piece. If it's too big, it will go over top and it won't sit on it, or if it's too small, it will rest in it. So I want it to match up to the base that I already have. I'm going to go ahead and start with a ball of clay similar to the size that I started with for my my cupcake base, and I can kind of compare. I'm going to start by making a pinch pot, pressing my thumbs into the clay. As I press my thumbs in, my fingers, my outside fingers, pull up on the clay so it doesn't stretch out too wide. And I want the walls to be 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch thick. Really, I use my finger as a measurement. I want them thinner than the width of my finger, but not too skinny, because then they won't be strong enough to support their shape or their form. I'm going to go ahead and set this on top and measure, and it looks like right now it's a pretty good size. I can turn this over and take my scissors and kind of trim and even out the edge of the cupcake so it rests nicely on the base. So I've got kind of that basic form, which is great. I can use a little bit of my slip water to smooth anything out that needs to be smoothed out. I can take it along the rim, smooth that out a bit. I can also do the same thing if I haven't yet with my cupcake base. Now's the fun part. I get to go ahead and decorate it. And what we talked about in class was the additive and subtractive method. When you carve into clay and you pull away, like so, this is called the subtractive method, because I'm taking away clay. Just like in math, when you take away something from another, it's subtraction. So I'm carving into my clay and I'm subtracting. And I can always smooth out what I've done to make it look interesting. Now, additive sculpture is when you add clay to an existing piece. So let's say I want to make a cherry. I can go ahead and roll a ball. I can slip and score anything that you add on whenever you're working in additive sculpture making, adding clay on. You do need to slip and score, so I'm making marks in what I'm adding on, and I'm making marks on the surface that it's touching. Okay, so slipping and scoring is marking up both surfaces. That's the scoring, and this is the slip, and it's helping us stick things together. The slip acts like a glue, and the scoring creates ridged surfaces that interlock. If I just glue things together like this, they'll stick, but if I glue things together like this, they'll stick a bit better. So we're making our surface look more like this. So I'm going to add some slip to my piece, and I can go ahead and stick on my cherry. Now this cherry is really thick, okay? As I'm noticing it, it's thicker than my finger. So what I think I probably should do is carve out and hollow out the middle of it so it looks kind of like a reverse eyeball. And I can go ahead and put a hole in the top of my cupcake. So what I'm doing right now is I'm creating a place where I can attach my cherry, and I'm allowing air to pass through the middle of the cherry out through the cupcake top. And I can make sure that that air, that passageway is clear by sticking my finger in, and now you can see up into that. I have a passageway. Now if you do a smaller cherry, let's say I were to do a cherry that was small and it's narrower than my finger, I don't need to worry about doing that. So I've got my cherry added on. I can go ahead and add all kinds of details to this to make it really cool. So that's one way of approaching this project.